Okay, picture this. Your company promises a huge bonus for everyone, but when it's time to actually get paid, they suddenly say, well, everyone doesn't quite mean you. That's not a hypothetical. That's the heart of a real legal battle we're digging into today. A huge fight over a bonus that all came down to just a few words in a contract.
So let's put you right in the middle of it. Imagine your company announces this awesome 18% profit share for the employees. Sounds great, right? But hold on. That's when the big question hits. Who exactly are the employees? Is it only the people on the ground doing the work, or does it also mean the managers and the supervisors?
You know, this was the central question in a Supreme Court case back in 2021. It was between a labor union and the cooperative they worked for. And believe it or not, the entire outcome hinged on how you define that one little word, employees.
All right, let's meet the two sides in the ring. On one side, we've had the LIMCOMA Labor Organization. They represent the regular, rank-and-file employees. And on the other side, their employer, the LIMCOMA Multi-Purpose Cooperative.
Now, this whole disagreement, it all comes down to this one super important document, the Collective Bargaining Agreement, or CBA. You can think of it as the official rulebook. It's a formal contract worked out between the union and the company, and it lays out all the terms, wages, benefits, the whole deal, specifically for the members of that union.
And baked right into their CBA was this big promise, a profit-sharing deal for 18% of the company's net surplus. I mean, on the surface, that seems pretty straightforward, doesn't it?
Well, this is where it all got messy. The company had this 18% pot of money ready to go, but the union and the management had two totally different ideas about who should get a piece of that pie.
And here is where the battle lines were drawn. The union's take was pretty simple. Hey, we negotiated this deal for our members, so the bonus belongs to our members. But the company saw it differently. They argued that the 18% was for all regular employees, and that would include managers and supervisors, the very people who weren't in the union.
So, with a whole lot of money on the line, and both sides absolutely convinced they were in the right, this whole thing started its long journey through the legal system. It was a classic tug-of-war over what the contract actually meant.
And what a journey it was. First, the case went to a voluntary arbitrator who looked at everything and sided with the union. You'd think that's it, right? Nope. The company appealed, and the Court of Appeals completely flipped the script, siding with the company. Now you've got two opposite rulings. This thing was destined for a final showdown.
With the lower courts basically at a stalemate, the case, known as GR No. 239746, finally landed at the Supreme Court of the Philippines. It was up to them to lay down the law and give the final, definitive answer.
So how do you solve a puzzle like this? Well, the court went back to basics. They used a fundamental legal idea called the plain meaning rule. It's rooted in Article 1370 of the Civil Code, and the concept is actually really simple. You don't go digging for secret intentions or complicated meanings if the words right there on the page are already perfectly clear.
And the rule itself, well, it's about as direct as it gets. The law says if the terms are clear and there's no doubt what the parties intended, you stick to the literal meaning. That's what controls everything. No ifs, ands, or buts. So the justices did something really simple. They just read the contract. They didn't try to guess what anyone might have meant. They focused on the actual words on the page. They asked one simple question. Who did the CBA itself say it was written for?
And wow, the contract could not have been more specific. It spelled it out clear as day. The CBA defined the bargaining unit it covered as the regular rank-and-file employees, and just as importantly, it listed exactly who was excluded: supervisors, technical folks, confidential employees, and managers.
And just like that, the debate was over. Based on the plain, simple meaning of the text, the Supreme Court reversed the Court of Appeals. They sided with the union. That 18% profit share, it belonged to the rank-and-file employees and to them alone.
The court's logic was really powerful and straightforward. They said, look, a collective bargaining agreement is, by its very nature, a contract for a specific group. So the benefits negotiated in that contract belong exclusively to that group. Giving those benefits to people who were explicitly excluded would literally violate the agreement. And besides, labor law already says managers can't join a rank-and-file union in the first place, which just reinforces that separation.
Now, you might be thinking this is just about one company, one union. But this decision really matters for everyone. It's a fundamental lesson about the power of written agreements, and that affects all of us, whether we're in a union or not.
So what are the big takeaways here?
First, the literal words in a contract are king. They carry immense legal weight. Second, if benefits are negotiated for a specific group, the law is there to protect that group's right to them. And maybe the biggest lesson of all, clarity is your best friend. Being vague and ambiguous is what starts these kinds of fights in the first place.
And all of this leaves us with one final thought. This entire legal drama, which took years to resolve, all came down to how a few simple words were interpreted. It really makes you think, doesn't it? When was the last time you really truly read the fine print on a contract that affects your job or your money or your life? Because as this case proves, those words have real, undeniable power.